Hello and welcome to another episode of Lions Roar. It's good to have you back, and we're starting the new year with some opportunities and some challenges. The first challenge I have is to interview Gordon Lyons. Gordon, welcome.
I don't think that's a challenge. I think that's an opportunity for you.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are
Happy
you?
New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. You have a good Christmas?
That was enjoyable. Yeah, what about you?
I did. Very, very good. Good to get some time away, some time with family. It's good to get back into it as well.
Yeah, I'd say so. We're back with a bang. We've had the budget in the news this week. The finance minister has brought forward his proposals, and they're his proposals. They're not in any way agreed. So give us a sense of your perspective on what's happened this week.
I think I come at this with a lot of frustration because the executive have agreed some things together. We've agreed a programme for government and we agreed a housing supply strategy where we set out what we want to do in terms of housing in Northern Ireland. But the budget that's been presented by John O'Dowd doesn't include the funding for that. And I think that's going to be really frustrating for people out there that they see an executive that has made priorities, it's made its plans known. But when it comes to budget allocations, that hasn't been followed up. Like I have lots of issues within the budget allocation for my own department, lots that we want to do that we won't be able to do. But I think that's the one that will stand out to people most. It's because we already have an agreement around that executive table, what it is that we need to do. Because I think everybody recognises how important housing is. You see it in your own constituency, I see it in mine. And we need to make sure that we have enough social homes, and so that we're not putting extra pressure on the private rented sector. And you'll know the huge increase that we've seen in rents in the private rented sector as well. So we're here to make a difference. We're here to improve people's lives. We've come together with a programme for government, and yet there's no funding within that for something that we have already agreed. So I think he's got that backwards, and we should focus on what our priorities are. We should understand what our priorities are as well.
Yeah, so the priorities are in the programme for government. Executive comes together, they say, this is our menu, suite of missions for Northern Ireland. This is how we're going to improve livelihoods and lives in Northern Ireland, and this is how we're going to provide for the people of Northern Ireland. And yet he's not providing the funding for it. And yet this week, I've heard a number of people say, oh, the DUP don't like this budget because it doesn't provide for their departments. But let's just be clear, it's not about us. It's about the provision of social housing. It's about delivering for communities in general in Northern Ireland, in education. It's about delivering for our children and for supporting families with childcare. Do you think there's enough recognition in the public that when we say this budget isn't good enough, it's actually because we're going to fail collectively to deliver on the priorities that matter so much?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's completely misunderstood. And you hear that from some commentators and those in the media that say, oh, you're just trying to protect your own departments. Well, we're trying to protect the services that we all want to see delivered. And I think the public will look at this and say, what on earth's going on? You say this is a priority for you, but you're not funding it. That does nothing for the reputation of Stormont. And I think it almost makes a bit of a mockery of what it is that we're trying to do. So it's very clear in the programme for government, it should be funded. The executive has said it's a priority. Well, where does Sinn Fein stand on this? Is social housing a priority for Sinn Fein? Because I would think if a finance minister in the Republic of Ireland had brought forward a budget like this, Sinn Féin would be the first to jump on top of them and say, what on earth is going on? What are you doing here in terms of social housing? Yet here we are in Northern Ireland, and that's exactly what they're prepared to do. There's huge hypocrisy there.
And you don't need to speculate. I mean, they do every day, shout from the rafters, criticising the Republic of Ireland government about their failure to deliver on social housing, and yet they're failing to deliver in Northern Ireland. A partitionist approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
To social housing.
And this is something they've already agreed, though. They have agreed within a programme for government and within a housing supply strategy, this is what we need to do. Yet when it comes to the money, it's not a priority for them, and that's clear.
Yeah. I mean, and there are things we can welcome. So we've been critical this year, the past year, that money that was set aside for waiting list initiatives, for example, was used for other things and spent on other issues within the Department of Health. This budget has 3 years ring fence for waiting list initiatives. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of things in there which are great that we can welcome, and the fact that there is a 3-year budget itself is something that obviously we would like to see happen, and all of the things that have been put in there. So yeah, of course, There are things that we want to see happen, we want to see delivered. But I think that the approach that has been taken on this has been the wrong one.
Yeah. And so we have this budget. We hear continually, and we agree, that you can't keep pouring money into a hole with a bucket with holes in it because the water will still escape. And that leads people to say, transformation, this magical word, transformation. How do we do services differently so that even though the money may not increase, the outcomes are better?
Yeah.
How, I mean, you're in the executive. Give us an inside scoop. How often does transformation get discussed? How regular do you have discussions about taking difficult short-term decisions for medium and long-term benefit?
Yeah, I don't see much evidence of that in the executive as a whole sometimes, and I think there does need to be a greater focus on that. But I'm practicing what I'm preaching in my own department. I'll go back to housing again. I'm not just sitting there with my hand out saying, give me more money. We have done over the last couple of years innovative things. We've done things differently. We're not just saying we need more resource. We're trying to make that money go further. So housing, as an example, we've been in a position where we're trying to a few things differently. First of all, we give a grant to housing associations to build homes. We're reducing that per unit to try and make that stretch further, and that the housing associations would take a greater burden of that, and that they would rely on additional private finance. We're also looking at the design guide for how we build homes, taking away unnecessary regulations, making sure that it's as simple and straightforward to build homes as possible. We're also looking at public land. How can we use public land better? How can we take the asset that we have? Northern Ireland Government Department's own land, equivalent to the size of County Armagh. So it's a huge amount. So how do we use that land better? And I'm bringing a paper to the executive very soon on that. So I know there are a lot of people will be listening and say, oh, there's politicians just always asking for more money. But we do need to make better use of the money that we have. DUP ministers are doing that already. We're looking at how we can make that money stretch further. I'm doing that as well in terms of the welfare system in Northern Ireland. We need to make sure that those who need benefits, require that additional support, get that support. But I also think we need to crack down on fraud. And there has been significant sums, hundreds of millions of pounds of fraud in our welfare system. I want to tackle that. Unfortunately, some of the other parties haven't been so keen to support me in that. I want to make sure that we properly highlight those that are defrauding the system. Other parties have been opposed to the moves that I've been trying to make.
Which makes no sense at all, because if you're there to help people at their time of need, and the money you have available to help people in time of need has been taken by people who don't need it, then you're not able to do the job you're supposed to do, provide for welfare.
Why wouldn't we want to go after those that are taking money that they're not entitled to, those that are deliberately misrepresenting their circumstances? So it's absolutely right that we do that. And there's been a real reluctance and reticence from the other parties to tackle that issue. But even worse is the fact that we are getting close to an agreement with the Treasury that if we invest money in tackling fraud, there's a huge saving that can come from that, and that we would share the benefit, because at the minute, if we stop benefit fraud, Treasury benefits 100%. We could split the proceeds of that, and it means for every pound that we invest, we would get £5 back. So I'm actually bringing forward proposals that would add money to the executive's budget, but unfortunately, the other parties haven't moved on that yet.
Yeah, so there's been this lazy attitude that says, why would you bother cracking down on fraud? Because if the money's saved, Northern Ireland doesn't benefit. Yeah. It goes to Treasury. You've worked with Treasury.
Yeah.
Red Book made reference to sharing any money recouped from fraud between the Northern Ireland Executive and Treasury. And still there's a reluctance on the part of some of your colleagues in the executive or colleagues within politics who say, no, fraud's okay, or we should let the circumstance continue.
It just does not make sense in any way. First of all, they don't want to go after those that have been defrauding the system. But secondly, when even there's an economic benefit there for us, additional money, like we think that we could get £25 million a year in this, that could make a huge difference to public services. If I had an additional £25 million in my budget, I'd be able to do many, many things that I'm not able to do. So that just doesn't make sense. And I'm going to keep making the case because I know that the public is behind us on this. The public wants a benefit system in place that is fair, that helps those that are in need and helps those get back into work if they can. I don't think the public want us giving money to those who are deliberately misrepresenting their circumstances.
Yeah. And this week we've had some reaction from other parties. We've heard from the Alliance Party indicating that they're going to struggle with this budget, that it doesn't suit their departments. They're not able to deliver on their statutory obligations. There is this fundamental misunderstanding that a lot of our departments' money and resource is tied up by adhering to the law that the Assembly has passed or has been there for some time. There's very little flexibility in it all. So where do you think things go from here?
Well, I think that there does need to be that opportunity for us to all sit down together and say, let's prioritize here. Rather than just saying, okay, what did you get last year? How do you keep continuing doing everything that you've done? Why don't we actually sit down and say, what is critical here? What's absolutely essential that we deliver and make sure that we properly fund that? And education is one of the issues where we see that most starkly is that just to continue doing what we're doing, an essential service, education, will require additional resource. So I don't think it's right or fair just to say, okay, here's the additional money that we have. We'll divide it among the departments and you do your best. No, we need to look at what's priority for us. What do we actually want to see happen? Unfortunately, there are many things that we are spending money on that we shouldn't be as well, that we could save money. And one of the examples was passed by the Assembly earlier this year was a climate change commissioner. Something that has been put in place, cost of £1 million a year, when there already will be a UK-wide climate change commissioner. But unfortunately, the ideology has overtaken many in that Assembly chamber and in the executive who don't want to do anything that would in any way be seen as not fully worshipping and bowing down at that climate change altar. But let's put everything on the table, see what our priorities are, fund those first, and then see what we can do afterwards.
We had a missive this week from the Environment Minister suggesting that we are ignoring science because he wants to create another level of bureaucracy that mirrors exactly the same levels of bureaucracy that are already failing the environment. There's no science involved in that. There's just practicalities and policy sense. What would an independent office of environmental protection do differently than the Northern Ireland Environment Agency, which is tasked with protecting our environment, or the Department for the Environment that has responsibilities around all of this too? It seems to be another layer of deferring and deflecting from the responsibilities that he himself has. There's no science in that.
No, and
there's a failure.
Many of those same ministers and members have no credibility at all when it comes to the science, because whenever we had the climate change debates in 2021, there was very clear advice from the experts, from those that knew about the science, about how far we should go in terms of our targets. But they were so enthralled by the climate change activists, and the Alliance Party and Sinn Fein were led by the Green Party on this, and we went beyond what the scientists were actually recommending in this way, and we have put ourselves in a really, really difficult position. And all of the evidence, all of the letters, and they're still online from the Climate Change Committee, said that to go that extra bit further that you're proposing for Northern Ireland would be really, really costly. And yet they were prepared to ignore all of that because they wanted to show their green credentials instead. So they were actually putting their ideology in front of the people of Northern Ireland, and that's coming at a cost. And it's an open secret in Stormont and in the government departments that these targets that have been put in place are targets that we're never going to be able to meet because they weren't even recommended by the Climate Change Committee in the first place. So I don't really want to hear from those members about following the science when they weren't prepared to do that whenever it really counted.
Yeah, let's get back to your department then. Anti-poverty strategy. Did John O'Dowd in his own budget that he's brought forward deliver much for anti-poverty initiatives?
No, and that's another disappointment. I think one of the best ways in which we can tackle poverty is getting more people into work, into forms of employment. I have plans. I have the Job Start programme, which has been really, really successful at getting hard to reach people into work. I've brought forward a disability and work strategy. It plans to increase our disability employment rate from 40% up to 50%, which would match where we are in the rest of the UK. An additional 50,000 people actually in work. That's the civil service and Belfast Health Trust combined in terms of the number of people.
But let's get this straight.
No,
let's get this straight. you had to bring forward an anti-poverty strategy. You brought it forward to
Yeah.
the executive. The executive, which includes Sinn Fein, agreed it.
Yes.
It went out to public consultation.
Mm-hmm.
It was castigated by a number of organisations. Then Sinn Féin say it doesn't provide enough, and this finance minister hasn't given you anything extra to provide for anti-poverty.
Yeah.
So, like, that's that's what we're dealing with.
That's exactly what we are having to deal with. That you have Sinn Féin agreeing for something, going out to consultation, and then all of their backbenchers saying how terrible it is, and other ministers, after they have agreed to it, going out saying how terrible it is as well, which is just ridiculous, and there's no basis in reality for what they're saying either. So they say it's not ambitious enough, it doesn't have what it needs to have, yet they're not giving any funding towards what some of those programs might look like.
Okay, so we're in a consultation period. There's 8 weeks for the public to have their say, and our message very clearly must be that if the public believe in the programme for government targets and commitments, if they believe in bringing down waiting lists, if they believe in providing childcare support, if they believe in providing social homes in Northern Ireland, then they need to make clear through this process that what's on offer isn't enough, what's on offer isn't going to cut it, and challenge Sinn Féin to say there's no point standing up and howling in the Dáil about the provision of social housing and castigating the government down there if you're doing nothing about it in Northern Ireland, if you're stripping the opportunity against the programme for government commitments from you and your ability to deliver for the people in Northern Ireland who need it most.
Yeah. And I would encourage people to respond to the consultation. I know it might sound a bit dry, and it's maybe not on the top of many people's agenda, but you do have the opportunity to have your say. And I think people need to be more vocal. And I think many people will agree with the points that we have outlined today. We'll get in behind and let those views be known and say we want to see social homes being built. We want money allocated to what our priorities are and what the executive have laid out as their priorities as well. And we want to tackle fraud and error. We want to make sure that our education system is properly funded, and make sure the pressure is put on executive ministers so that they fund the things that actually matter to people in Northern Ireland first and foremost.
Yeah, well, Gordon, thank you. I know that you and Emma Little-Pengelly and Paul Given will continue to champion not only our cause, but the cause of the people of Northern Ireland, and making sure Northern Ireland works. There'll be a number of challenges over the next number of weeks, and Northern Ireland needs a budget, but it needs a budget not just to have one on paper, but one that works and delivers for people. And that's the task ahead over the number of weeks. So good luck with that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to you for tuning in to Lions Roar. It's good to be back. Give us a like and a share if that's what you do when watching these things. But thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you soon.